Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We are gonna hop right into it with Stories in the Key of Kate, New York Living Book 2. Wait, Book 2? Well, where's Book 1? So I had to do a little digging to find the first book, called Kate. Both books are available on Amazon, but they're available under two different accounts with the same name of the author, Gordon Davidescu. But as of recording this, it doesn't look like the first book is available on Kindle, which sucks. Now, seeing how the first book seems to be a full book and the second one seems to be a series of short stories, I'm not sure if it matters so much what happens in the first book. But we will still take a look at that one too, and then read on to the second one. While Jean Michel Pinot attempts to find some semblance of love in New York, Felix Twixen just wants to go back to living a human life, complete with feeling that there is a reason to get up every morning. Sandy, one of Felix's best friends who is finally getting over it, finds herself entangled in a relationship she isn't even sure she can handle. A follow-up story of sorts to a play that has yet to be produced. Oh, so the rabbit hole goes even deeper with this. This was originally published in a series format for Go Inside magazine. Oh, and there's a link. It was revised and expanded upon for the Kindle release. Now, I am sad to say that it doesn't look like this book is available for Kindle at all, only in paperback. The good news is that the link still works, and it actually goes to his blog, bowlesblogs.com, and he is still active. It looks like he posts about once a month, and he's got a podcast, a Facebook, SoundCloud, Twitter. He's no slouch, that's for sure. So let's head back to Stories in the Key of Kate. This cover is fantastic. You know that it's multiple stories, you know that it's set in New York, and you know that Kate plays a key factor. As far as I can tell, he did everything right with this cover. I noticed though that this is pretty expensive, $7, and that's not for the paperback, that's for the Kindle version if you don't have unlimited. Even with exposure, you might be pricing yourself out of the market here, especially since you're not a known author. Pricing is up to you ultimately, but I do suggest you think twice about setting it so high, especially since a lot of books are 99 cents, and people will ultimately have to choose whether to buy your book or 7 other books that exceed more than 105 pages. Let's read the synopsis. The novella Kate was rich with characters, but beyond that, a lot of little stories just asked to be told that could be found in the folds and cracks of the main story. Here are 50 short stories that fill in a lot of important details that you wouldn't know about otherwise. It also introduces new characters in the New York living universe, such as Sandy's cousin Deborah and young Earl, a youth in search of a home and ultimately family. So the first book plays a huge part in setting up the second book. But I had to jump through a lot of hoops to find out anything about the first book without asking you. If you want your work to be discovered, you should make that as easy as possible. I'm sure I don't have to tell anybody listening to me right now that people tend not to want to jump into a sequel before they've read the first book. So if you don't have flashing neon signs pointing everybody to the first book when they click on the page advertising your second book, then you've got a problem. I recommend re-releasing the first, update the cover a little bit, and making it really widespread. Take the opportunity to make the first book as cheap as possible so that barrier to entry isn't so lofty. So let's take a break from the actual book and let's talk about short stories in general. So I'm about to admit something a little embarrassing, but bear with me, there is a point. My first experience with short stories was in middle school, and I had just picked up this book called Chicken Soup for the Soul. It was a book full of different stories, poems, written by a ton of different people if I remember correctly. One story in particular, I will never forget because it happened to be my favorite, and you can tell that I was really young and ignorant when I fell in love with this story. In hindsight, I'll probably regret even admitting this out loud. So the story is about a young freshman girl. She's just started school and she catches wind of a rumor about a predator. He goes after girls who choose to exercise late at night or leave their dormitory window open, and he basically gives them the best night of their life. So the bulk of the story is about a girl trying to be his next victim. She goes jogging in the park at 2 a.m. She never locks her dormitory window, and she basically breaks every rule that every girl is told not to break when it comes to personal safety against sexual predators. But by, I think, her junior year, maybe sophomore, she gets her wish. He comes and visits her in her own dorm and ends up giving her a fantastic experience. Now, why am I mentioning this? God, why am I mentioning this? It's because when it comes to short stories or books that have 50 short stories in them, you only need one to hook somebody. Chicken Soup for the Soul was my favorite go-to book for a while, and I literally only read it for that one story. Some people are like that. They don't need the whole book to be gold. They just need to find one story in there that really, really appeals to them. Which is why it's such a shame that your synopsis doesn't talk about any stories in there. I mean, we know there's 50. We know that there's Kate, Sandy's cousin Deborah, and young Earl. The stories themselves, you leave a mystery and leave a very thin trail of breadcrumbs in order to find the first book that'll actually give the reader context for what's going on in this one. Give us more and make it easy for us to obtain that. You shot yourself in the foot in a lot of ways with this, but it's not too late. There's always the option to re-release and try again. For what it's worth, I hope you do. And I hope I helped. Thank you all for tuning in with me, and Gordon's information is linked below if you are interested in finding out for yourself what's actually going on in these books. Tune in next time for our next book.